Hello, what's up? Just happy to be here. Another episode is coming down your way. Episode 672 of this podcast series called Coffee with Mirko. So happy to have you here. Just looking forward to our next guest, John Gordon. You guys are in for a big treat. John is an amazing coffee professional and he just tuned in, speaking of the man himself. So we'll send him through a request and start chatting. G'day, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you traveling?
Yeah, good, good. Starting to wind down for the evening.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And thank you very much for giving us an hour of your time and coming in and having a chat with me. I really appreciate. And has things everything been okay with you and your family with the whole pandemic situation, despite New Zealand being one of the leading countries of?
Yeah, I think. Well, unfortunately, we went into a lockdown again just recently. So it was 2 weeks ago, I think. It hasn't been too bad, but yeah, back working at home, which has been great. With I don't know if you can hear, but a nice, beautiful new little baby in the house. Um,
I heard the news. Yes,
yeah, so
congratulations.
thank you. So it's actually been quite nice being at home. So. But still being extremely busy, but definitely every day feel very fortunate of living in New Zealand, even though both of our families, all my family's in Australia and all my fiance's family's in the States, so it does get a bit tough sometimes.
Yeah, I get that, but yeah, at least I suppose, yeah, you can enjoy your newborn and have a bit of family time, even though it's limited.
Yeah,
But that's, yeah, it's interesting. Your baby is part of the uh, coronavirus babies, like
yeah,
it's very interesting. But yeah, hopefully things will get better, especially well in New Zealand for you and Australia here. And just to get things started, I suppose, could you kindly give us a bit of context and tell us a bit more about how you started your coffee journey?
so my coffee journey, it actually started in Melbourne. I was born in Melbourne. My family moved up to the Gold Coast when I was about 8 years old. And then in my early 20s, I moved back down to Melbourne for 2, 3 years, I think it was, and was looking for something, a different career path from where I was. And my ex-wife had actually gotten into coffee, and she was actually working at a small coffee roastery in Albert Park in South Melbourne. And I would go along to tastings and things like that. And, so this thing was kind of interesting. And back then it was St. Ali had just popped up, and there was some interesting things going on there. It was a nice place to go for breakfast on the weekends and things. Um, and then I was lucky enough to get offered a job as a barista with basically no experience at the same cafe in Albert Park, and got thrown in the deep end and really loved it. And had gone from doing several odd years of night work to nice early mornings and finishing at 3 in the afternoon. And South Melbourne's beautiful. I lived 2 seconds away from the cafe as well, so that whole area was my stomping ground for a while. So, and on my days off from the working at the cafe, I would go into St. Ali and pick something on the menu and just really start to experience what coffee had to offer. And that was that was a big thing for me, just looking at all these weird things on a menu, and just going, oh, I'll try that. And yeah, it was a great experience, and I think it was quite lucky to kind of be exposed to really good coffees from the beginning. So.
And I think it's so beautiful, and it just keeps coming back up on how you know coffee found you rather than the way around, or well, you sort of found coffee and it threw you in the deep end of just having this massive career that you had along the years, like just impressive numbers on your resumes, and we'll go back onto that in a minute. But I think it's interesting because it's like you really have transitioned from passion and turned that passion into a career. I think that most people overthink that, but I think what you were doing, which was exposing yourself to beautiful coffee and just going and exploring, is pretty much what people should be doing. Just like reading, learning, watching, I don't know, YouTube videos, I don't know, James Hoffman, or and then eventually you can land a job and just grow it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I never, I never went into coffee with any kind of thought of a career. I knew I needed a career change, and this was an opportunity to do something that was, I think, a lot better for my mental health, my physical health, and it was enjoyable. It was something different, something very different, and I quickly discovered that obviously there was a whole lot more to coffee, and the more and more I dived in back then, the more and more there was to explore. And everyone has that kind of aha moment, and I'm sure it's quite similar for most people, but for me, it was tasting a Ethiopian natural coffee, and tasting notes on it was blueberries, and all of a sudden, I think I'd been tasting the same coffee over a few weeks or something, and all of a sudden there was yeah, there's blueberries, and then that was it. It was game over. So, and to this day, like, Ethiopia has been my most favorite country for a number of reasons. In the last trip that I took, end of 2018, I've never been a super emotional person. And especially when leaving countries, I've lived in, a few countries, and, even, leaving family and things like that. And this time leaving Ethiopia, again, it was a very, very different experience for me. And I was sitting at the airport ready to go and just lost my mind, for the first time ever of going, I'm leaving a country that I don't want to leave, that I know I'm going to miss. And, it's a big, huge chunk of my heart. It goes to Ethiopia,
That's beautiful. I think, which really goes down to that connection that coffee creates. It's not just a beverage. It's not just a drink or a commodity. But before we kind of expand on that, I'm very interested to ask you if you want to answer that job that you were talking about. That transition. What were you doing before?
I was in the security industry for about several years. Anywhere from I started off being a bouncer in nightclubs, and at a very young age I was running a security company with a friend of mine, and we were doing anything from armed escorts to large cash carries, and managing security teams at nightclubs, or hotels and bars and things like that, and yeah, it just got to a point where I wanted to kind of, I knew hospitality was kind of my thing. I enjoyed hospitality, and I wanted to kind of dive more into that. So I was trying to go for different types of positions, like management positions and things like that in different areas. But no one would really look at me, even though I had an extensive resume in in the security side of things. So there was one particular hotel I was working at the time, where I was running a small security team there, and I just asked the managers there. I was like, right, I need to get more experience. If you can't kind of look at me in that kind of aspect, then I need to get more experience. So I would, on my days off, or if there were spare hours somewhere, I was working in the liquor store that they had as well, to learn more about wine and alcohol and spirits and all that kind of stuff, and then also doing barback work when there were shifts available, to learn the back end of the bar before I could go on to serving and things like that. And Um, and yeah, it was a a long transition. And then when I moved down to Melbourne, I managed to get a management position down there. But it was a long transition to get out of what I was doing and what I was just really not enjoying.
Because it's not easy, right? But also you touch base on a huge word for me, which is mental health, and I think we often abuse of our physical but also mental health heavily. Things like the physical health is, well, sometimes it's irreversible, but there's certain things you can do, but the mental health one is such a high challenge, and even there's a mental health component even in the decision of shifting because it's stressful. Because whether you're worrying about money, whether you're worrying about your career or what people think about you, so I think sometimes that such a underestimated topic around careers or work or
Yeah.
anything. It's so, but without your health, it's just pointless what you're doing or how much you're doing or how much you're earning or making. So it takes quite personality to make that move and follow the passion as well. It's the second component to it. And then you sort of started competing. Why? Was that like a natural progression for you?
I remember when I first started in coffee in Melbourne. Somehow I can't even remember how it came about. Um, my boss at the time um, was going to. There was an information night on the Victorian Barista Championships. I'd never heard anything about all this kind of stuff, right? So I went along and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I might have a go at competing, and went along to this info night back then. I think I can't even remember what year it was, but I remember seeing Dave Macon there, and a few others, and saw that there was this interesting thing, but it was not really something for me at that time. I even to this day I still struggle with standing up and talking in front of more than half a dozen people.
Mhm.
So jumping up on stage, it can be quite a tough thing. So it wasn't until London that I started competing. The first couple of years I was in London, I worked for an events company that set up mobile coffee bars all around the world. Well, mainly Europe and all around UK. Um, making thousands of cups a day, and you're setting up machines, breaking them down day in, day out, and all that sort of stuff. And it was a long, hard couple of years. I worked long hours, drove a lot, but I got to see basically all of Europe. So it was amazing to be able to have that opportunity to see a lot of the world. And at that point, I think just before I had started there, my boss had said, was talking about this guy James Hoffman and all this kind of stuff, and I would jump on the internet and have a look at what was available back then, which wasn't a huge amount, um, and he had I think the year before he had actually had James had done a coaching session with Dave Macon when Dave had won the Aussie Championships, and I found a whole bunch of their notes on the pallet racking downstairs where all the machines were and everything, where they had set up to do all this training and stuff. Um, and I got interested in it then, and thought it was something interesting. So I thought I'd have a stab at it, and that was 2009. I did the first UK Barista Championships, and just in a heat. Didn't really have any idea what I was doing, and I didn't do too bad in the heat, and managed to get through to the semi-finals first time, and I think I finished 14th or something that year. But my first experience jumping up on stage was just horrible. It was just, I was so nervous, and yeah, it was a horrible experience, but I didn't want to let it beat me. So I put my hat in the ring for latte art competition, because that was, I would just, that was that one thing to obsess about, that I could do, and with the events that we would do and making 1,000 cups a day, it was, perfect for practicing, because you just literally, doing 1,000, pours in a row, And I managed to win the UK latte art championship that year, and made finals in the worlds and got sixth with some pretty shoddy latte art, to be fair. But yeah, that was kind of my entry into this thing. So and then yeah, I made it, you know, a real kind of goal of mine to try and overcome that fear of jumping up and talking in front of people. So
it's just like you say, it's not easy, and I think it's okay also if if you don't choose that path because of the certain obstacles you can't overcome. But then there's so many roles across the coffee industry, whether you want to become an importer, or a roaster, or you want to just have a cafe business, or you want to be a photographer that just takes photos of coffee shop business. Like there's so many elements to it, and it doesn't mean that if you don't compete, it's still okay. So I think props to you, because it takes, even I would 100%, I would struggle to jump on stage and talking to in a microphone. Forget how many people, like even hearing my own voice, so be like, oh god. So that when I re-listen to this podcast, or I'm putting them together to put on YouTube, it's like, okay, I gotta press the play button because I need to kind of get back into the zone where it was, the conversation, and it's like, oh well, that's okay. But in front of a crowd, it takes balls. I mean, without being too polite about it. And yeah, you did fantastic. And like, I think when you were talking about Ethiopia, for example, and now competing there, you must have had incredible relationships with the coffee you were working with, and especially throughout the years, and you started building more and more relationships. Hence, how emotional your last trip was in Ethiopia. I mean, I think we often give coffee for granted, and we forget the many people behind it. Not just pickers, farmers, but even simply the person, John and Jennifer walking through the coffee shop, picking up their lattes on their weekend run. Because maybe for a few years we did focus on the cup and the milk, which is fine. But do you think that people is something that we let a little bit on the side, but it's actually something that we should bring back into the picture?
100%. We and especially, and I'm going to throw specialty coffee in the deep end here. Not that the other parts of the industry don't do the same, but we're very good at forgetting the people, or really forgetting about whether it's the people that are directly surrounded by us, or we are surrounding ourselves with, or especially for me anyway, right down to the producers. Obviously we're really forgetting the human aspect of coffee, and what it takes to get there. And when you try and communicate that to people about about what it takes to produce that one espresso or that one filter coffee. I did an interesting talk in Montreal a couple of years ago, where I kind of broke down the basics of what it takes, the amount of cherries and whatnot, break everything down to make one espresso. And when you look at the number of the things, and you backtrack everything based on averages, and you try and get people to look at things in a different light, it starts to get people to think, and that there's such a manual process in the beginning of our industry, that it takes humans to do it, and the conditions that majority of those humans are in are appalling. Yeah, we're sitting on the other, in our first world countries, sipping our drinks and doing whatever, and we have roofs over our heads and electricity and all that kind of jazz. And
I got air conditioning right here.
Air conditioning, yeah. I've got the heater on right now.
The heater, yeah.
And I have literally 4 screens in front of me right now, and you know, we are exceptionally privileged, and we forget that very easily, too easily.
Yeah, too easily. And I think that ironically, because I receive questions or emails asking how can we do it, how can we help. And look, there's been obviously a zillion parts of conversations. Where I always get back to is the fact that whether we like it or not, it's about what we can control and not, which often it is our own individuals' choices and behavior, but also conversation. So it really starts from the people, the change. So it is the one-on-one conversation that you have with a friend who doesn't know much. I remember clearly I went to this friends of mine house, and he offered me a cup of coffee on his kind of one of those machines that you buy in JB Hi-Fi, and I would have said yes, but then he pulled out his bag of coffee. I'm not gonna say where it was, and I was like, okay. I said, look, let's just go back to my place, and I want you to try something different. And I just made a very simple AeroPress with nothing, nothing. It wasn't 90 plus. It wasn't nothing. He lost his mind how good it was. And then we started a very simple conversation, which wasn't a preach. It was more the minute that someone is interested and question, that's the minute that you can actually express yourself and they will listen, rather than preaching or pushing too hard, because otherwise they'll be like, oh, I don't want to hear it. So I think that's the other aspect. I think it's one-on-one conversations and individual choices. Same as the environment. I mean, what you buy has a certain amount of steps from from the conception to all the way to your package. So how much package is involved, but also how many kilometers, how much emissions, how much water, electricity, and resources were used for 100 grams of beans, beef, tofu, bananas, like everything has. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, it's such a people center, and coffee is this hospitality, which is people.
Yeah, and we've done on this side of the industry, we've done such a great job at alienating people by going, here are these ridiculously, phenomenally tasting coffees that are insanely expensive, and going, this is specialty coffee. But the majority of the consumers are so used to something, completely different. And we're sitting here going, this is specialty coffee, but that's not just specialty coffee. There's such a wide range, and even pushing specialty coffee aside, for me in the last year and a half or so, or 2 years, of exposing myself to, subspecialty coffees, or just on the cusp, and actually roasting them and playing around with them, with a completely different mindset, kind of realizing that there's, there is a huge bank of these coffees that if we just actually roast, treat them well, they're actually more approachable to your average customer, to be able to get them to understand, oh, there can be a different quality of coffee. It has to be a stepping stone. You can't go from 0 to 100 miles and expect somebody to just lap it up and get all excited about it. And there's going to be, 1 in 100 people that are maybe going to get that excited about that kind of extreme. And I think and again, that comes back to the whole human aspect of it, right? A lot of these, a lot of producers, they'll have their specialty coffee farms, or, their experimental farms and things like that. But then they'll also have other farms that are their higher volume, maybe higher yielding varietals that are maybe not as good a quality, that are bringing them in the money to hopefully survive. And I think we devalue that process, and financially devalue that product way too easy. So there's a lot more that we can do there. Like I'm I've had a few conversations with some producers about, like, I want to know more about There's one particular producer from Panama. He does amazing, like phenomenal, beautiful coffees. But he's got a farm that's sitting at 1,000 meters, and I'm like, I want to taste that. I want to taste that. I want to see what that is, and I want to see if there's an opportunity for us to work on improving that cup score to be able to improve, hopefully, the price that he can fetch for that coffee, because that's going to be the thing that keeps his businesses going, you know. So
Because that's exactly why it's important having these conversations, because it's such a fragile situation out there for many producers, for many, even to a degree, you know, like even cafes in oversaturated markets like Melbourne. It is a fragile element out there, and I think that trying to do what you're doing, even for this last example, is just much needed, because then you can have more conversations. And you know, if you can now fill up a couple of containers extra a year because all of a sudden there's a way for it. Yeah, it's interesting how humans help other humans, and that's really what it comes down to. And I agree. Look, we can't. With my friend example, I didn't take him from 0 to 100. It was, you know, taking him from 60 to 75. But there was already an interest because we're friends. We talk, and he just never been into coffee. And all of a sudden, he asked questions. How can I drink a black? I want to stop using milk because, you know, I'm going towards this diet choice. And I said, well, you need to start to choose a different style of roasting, because otherwise it's going to be quite big and quite bitter. That really what it boils down to. We're not going too scientific. We're not going to, you know, don't worry about my fancy scale. I got that because I'm lucky. Don't worry about the grinder. Like, it's like you just go to, and I gave him a list of coffee shops or roasters where it's online, or if you want to walk up and buy it yourself, it's in your 5-kilometer radius because, you know, of the lockdown. And that's sort of what he sparked up. And now he calls me from time to time, you know, and he's like, man, I ran out of beans. What should I get next? I'm like, I don't know, but what did you like the most out of the last one, you know? And then we can, you know, simplifying the dictionary is also probably important. Yeah.
I mean, that's another great thing that specialty coffee that we've done, you know, is alienate people by, you know, coming up with these, you know, pocket science like theories and not even really theories, just very, very rudimentary processes and things like that. And, you know, there's very little real, I believe anyway, there's very little real science in coffee that's been done. And what has been done is actually, you know, contradicted so much that we've done in coffee in the last 10, 20 years, that we need to do more actual, like, real science and understand things more, because we're literally just kind of throwing these random things out there. Everyone's doing it. Everyone has their own opinions and things like that. And that's basically what it is. It's opinions. It's not, there is there is very, very, very few people out there actually doing real science out there to understand what we're doing. And so we're great at coming up with all these methods that we believe are, you know, should be textbook, and this is the only way to do this, and this is the only way to do that, and anything else is basically shit. Whereas we're based on, our whole industry is based on, the reality is subjective taste, and everyone grows up differently regionally, and the sensory development is so different that not everyone's going to like the same thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You know, if everyone liked the same thing, then we'd be screwed, basically. And this kind of leads me into that, you know, looking at the other end of the industry and then those kind of lower quality coffees, you know, there's a huge home for them, and the same goes for, you know, bigger business as well, corporate businesses and things like that. I think there's opportunities there where specialty coffee can actually help corporate businesses change their mentalities and their practices and their and the way they do things. That can actually have a massive effect on our industry, a massive positive effect on our industry if it's done right. There's opportunity there, but specialty coffee is great at looking at corporate or big business and frowning upon it. Yet where, specialty coffee companies don't realistically have the financial backing to be able to do all these scientific experiments or fund, processing stations or, things like that. Unless you getting into a bigger kind of process and you look at the work that companies like Project Origin do with many producers and communities, and they build that into their pricing structure, which is fantastic because then it makes it possible to be able to do more. But there's more we can do, and it'll going back to your original thing. It comes down to people and then getting in front of as many people as you can and having these conversations and basically let's stop bullshitting each other, really, and start to look after our industry.
Word, I can't sum it up, but like you're the second person actually that has quite made a remark around the commercial world, and the other person, for the sake of the reference, I think he's probably online. It's Andre Eierman, and he really hit me hard when he said a couple of things around bigger corporations, because then ultimately it would actually help the entire movement if they started buying in a certain different way, certain different coffees. Then actually, if we really have the best interest of farmers, what ultimately comes down to volume. It comes down to volume. Whether we like it or not, it comes down to volume.
Yeah.
So then, it was interesting. I think that's where the conversation started to go. And my hope, I've said this a couple of times, but my hope is the coronavirus has pushed many people to brew more coffees than ever at home. I have a customer who's a coffee roaster, and their online sales are 800% up. That's a ridiculous number. Like if you put in perspective, that's like a stupid number. I'm hoping that will play as an element like people have treated food. If from Melbourne, like when MasterChef started, so more and more people are getting into the cooking show and they're like talking and they're really interested, because ultimately, going back to how you stumbled across coffee, was you were lucky to be close to a person who was already in it. Your curiosity was like starting. And once you got that curiosity element, that's when you start looking and doing what you were doing. And like, okay, today I sent a lead, I'm gonna drink that. And then it's like, oh, the blueberry. And then I hope that people will start appreciating more their, local barista that they go to every day, or they used to go to every day, because now they understand that they struggle to make a good cup of coffee. And then to spark more and more conversations, and hopefully, because of lockdown, there's going to be a craving of connection, and maybe that craving of connection will allow to open up more and more conversations like we were just talking about. And it's a slow burner, one conversation at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's that craving, it'll definitely come back, and like you're saying, hopefully people will be sitting there going, well, hang on a second, how are they doing that? And then so when that opportunity does come up again, that conversation starts up. It's like, well, for the last however many months I've been trying to make this coffee at home and I just can't do it. How are you doing? What's going on? And then I guess I hope consumers will become a little bit more accept like a little bit more kind of our geekery, right? So, but we still have to be careful as well, because at the same time we've all been, bundled up and we're, ready to burst with all of this stuff that we've been experimenting with over lockdown. We have to be careful and approach it right, and kind of feed this new curiosity and see how far we can push it. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity here once hopefully we get out of it.
Mm-hmm. I definitely lost track of time because the conversation has been flowing so well, and but this is we 5 minutes past the halfway mark, and there's a ritual question, the out of the box question that I ask everybody, and I hope you're prepared. If you could, who would you like to have dinner with? It can be anyone, doesn't have to be coffee, literally any person, alive or not. It's your dinner.
Who? Or that's a real tough one. You know what? To be honest, actually no, it's not tough, because it's a recent thing that came up, and I've had this kind of interesting conversation with Kirk Pearson on his podcast. Was you know, back in my high school days, I wanted to essentially was trying everything that I could to be a professional basketball player. So you know, back then my heroes were like Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, and Charles Barkley, and the likes of that. And I would love to have dinner with Michael Jordan. Yeah, without a doubt, that would be
Last Dance.
completely non coffee, and yeah, that would be nice to.
Yeah. Have you actually, even though it's a bit off the, have you watched the Netflix whatever series, the Last Dance?
Yeah, because it that whole timeline like really took me back to those days of when I was, you know, breathing, eating, sleeping, playing basketball, you know, all throughout my teens, 7 days a week, morning, lunch, evening, and you know, I would stay up late and watch whatever games I could, and things like that. So every week that I was watching The Last Dance, for me, just it was like extremely emotional for me to kind of just have that reminder of that whole process, and then see what was going on in the back end of all of those things that were that was happening throughout all those years of basketball. So yeah.
What I liked about it the most is that it doesn't matter whether you like even sport, you know, not just whether you like basketball, sport in general. I think that a lot of people would enjoy watching it, even if they hate sport. It was just more than just basketball. It was just, there's a lot of psychology, there's a lot of personality, biography, and basketball was just one element. And I'm hoping that, going back to coffee, you know, basketball was MJ's fixation, passion. Like, it was just, you know, like that's what it was. And what it is, not what it was, what it is. And I think when people find that passion and they got that fire, I think things start to tick in a different way, a different pace. Yeah. And I hope that if someone watches a movie about coffee, I know there's been a few recent releases, or read a book, or listen to someone like your podcast with Kirk, or here or anywhere else, it's just, I hope that anyone can enjoy some stories, and it's about storytelling. And going back to one of the topics you brought up, I think to give justice to the beautiful people and humans around coffee, there's a much needed storytelling about cutting the bullshit, like you said, and as long as there's consent, because it's something very important. I think that it's easy just to take a quick snap and just slap it everywhere else, but without asking the person. But then if I found my face on, some weird, some countries around the world in a giant poster saying, something around caps, I'll be like, oh, I can't remember someone asking me for that picture. But I think storytelling is essential. And I think that we human, I think there's a more chance for John and Jennifer, Jake and Jennifer to connect with a producer story, because it's more relatable. It's humans rather than cherry cola, Jaffa cake, coffee, and you should be able to pick all of those.
And I think it's when you see companies like I'm sorry, I'm going to keep using Honor Coffee as the example, because I know so many of the people there and the business quite well, and Project Origin. When you see companies like that really like utilizing that, or bridging that connection between producer and consumer, they're doing it in such a great way, the communication side of it, but then they're also backing it up with, like, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that I'm sure a lot of people don't really know, that goes back to the producers. It's not a case of exploitation. It's there's a, people are essentially being rewarded or paid for what they're worth and the effort that they're putting in, and I kind of, it upsets me a lot when you see companies, whether it be specialty companies or corporate companies, that leverage off that exact same thing, but haven't done the groundwork, haven't done the real kind of back end work in I believe being able to utilize that space. They're just going, from whoever they're getting their green from, just send me information, send me photos, and blah blah blah, and then kind of putting all this stuff, using it as marketing material to sell their product, and it's kind of, it's upsetting a bit when you see people kind of taking that above and beyond, and then you see people that go above and beyond, to be able to make sure that a producer's story is told in such a beautiful way, and that there is a true relationship there, that's being built, and that relationship is really being pushed so that there is a benefit to the producer and the community surrounding it as well.
Yeah, and I to add to that, I think that, of course, there's a certain amount of people who can't go to Origin for a number of reasons, but I think that with certain producers, not everyone has access to internet at Origin, and I get it, but there's no reason why it cannot be done what we are doing right here, right now, or a quick, like whether it's a podcast format, whether it's a written format. Written is, it's always been tricky because it's not, the evidence of, okay, that conversation happened. But even having a half an hour live stream, whichever platform it is, if you can't reach Origin, would tell the story, because then the producer, him or herself, would be able to tell their story. I know there's obviously, where it's possible, where there is not a huge English barrier, obviously there's a lot of components, I get it, but where it's possible, I think that's another format. I think that's where, we demonize social media, we demonize technology, but that's where they come in handy, because then you can give a voice to someone if they're able to, whether it's their son because they're studying English, or whether it's themselves and they speak a little bit of it. I think that could be could be maybe a way, a different way to sort of
bridging that gap, and it's the only way that we can actually do things now, because we, the world can basically, or can't basically travel. So, this is the perfect opportunity to be able to utilize these platforms to bridge that gap in a really, really beautiful way. I have the last couple of months, especially, a lot of conversations with a few producers that I know, and seeing videos of some of the devastation in certain areas and things like that, or just having the general conversation of, how are things going, how have things been affected, and what can be done, or a simple conversation of, I was speaking with another producer, it was probably about 2 months ago now, and she asked if I knew anyone that would be interested in she's got, I think she had 10 boxes of this particular coffee, and she wanted to move it and things like that, and I'm like, well, I'll buy some, and and being able to have those connections, and in the end I ended up buying 2 coffees, and they're on their way from El Salvador, just for me, for my little kind of hobby roasting, and I launched my what was going to be my competition coffees online to be able to sell and put them out there and communicate those things. And you know, it's those platforms that if they weren't there, I wouldn't be able to have these conversations with them. Two producers, one I've known for about 10 years, another one I've known for about 8 years, and one more recently the last couple of years. So, you know, being able to have those conversations so quickly, or, you know, looking at experimental processing and you know, testing certain things and stuff like that. And, you know, there's opportunity there to really kind of, you know, make use of these platforms as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been lovely talking to you about these topics. It's just I love hearing your insights and what you have to say. It's been flying the time, but barely read any of these questions. But maybe I read one.
Rapid fire,
which is the best one. I think which is the best way to do it, in my opinion. I'd rather a more flowy kind of conversation. But something I really kind of have interest in asking you, because I think it's a very important question. I think even moving forward, this is beneficial for many people. Hospitality is far from perfect, even pre-COVID. If you could change one thing, what would that be?
One thing. I mean, this is going to be a very broad answer, but we've been realistically, and I want to focus more so on cafes here. We've been doing the same thing for like 20 years. Cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. Someone just break the mold. Like, it's there are ways of doing it, and I know a lot of it is, well, you know, it works here, so let's just do the same, and it should work, and for the most part it does. But now, you know, post COVID, we have to do things differently. Cafes that have been doing the same thing over and over again for the last 20 years, it's not going to work any longer. Don't try and fight you know, do the hard slog and end up losing your business because this is all you know. You've done it this way for the last however many decades or however many years that you've been doing it, and it's going to continue to work that way. It's not. That's fact. It's not. We have to break the mold. Break the mold and innovate, do something new. What do you got to lose? Because if you don't, we need to adapt, because if this continues on and we keep going in and out of lockdowns, we need to figure out a way to continue life, because we can't just keep locking everything down and expecting that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah,
we need to figure out how to adapt. We have to adapt.
And I love
now, then we're screwed.
I'm
very
humble.
Same with roasteries. Roasteries need to, same thing, same. Everyone's doing the same. You know, so-and-so's got that machine, so I'm just going to get that machine as well, and you know, just do these generic profiles, same packaging, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. No,
I'm
going to change.
It's humbling how much I resonate with this topic, because it's something that I've said before, but I love what you said also about if you work there, don't be afraid, like it can work here kind of conversation. I think there's such a fear of copying, but it's not copying, because you give it your spin, your mission, your values with it. I mean, I know I shouldn't drop names, but it's like recently a coffee roaster in Melbourne, they just put out their roastery a vending machine, and in the vending machine is coffee bags. I don't know, you probably know who it is, and I was like, fuck yeah, like it doesn't matter where it's gonna make $1 million or where it's just like, even though I've seen it at Mice done by another coffee roastery because it was convenient for them at Mice because they were understaffed. And I was like, oh yeah, that's clever. And that was like 2 years ago. But still, they did it. And I was like, yeah, we need this. We need innovation. And I think it's just important that we look at that, whether it's machinery, whether it's packaging, whether it's the concept, whether it's the ideas. And I think that you're right. It's been the same for 20 years. And I've had, unfortunately, there's a beautiful shop where I live, and it's they only cook what I eat in terms of my diet choice and lifestyle, and I really like them. You know, they're lovely people. And a couple of times, the first lockdown, I asked the owner, I'm like, oh, I've noticed that you don't have any ordering apps like to order food, and it's just people have to call you. I'm like, yeah, you know, we don't like the idea that they take this much percentage. And in my head, because I can't tell him what to do, and I don't want to tell him what to do, but in my head I was like, yeah, but then you'll be able to spread the word, and eventually Tony will realize that if they call you directly, they will save $5 fee, but now they found you, so they might call you next week without using Uber. But that's just basics. That's not even. But there's people
it's
also
weighing up that balance of that commission percentage. So you either you know, take that hit of the commission percentage, or you take nothing at all home. So it's kind of like, well, you know, and on that note, you know, the platforms for that kind of stuff are actually a lot more available and user friendly now, and quickly developed. You know, I can, and I've done it in the last few months, just as an example for somebody of going, in 90 minutes, I set up an online shop. 90 minutes. So there's no excuse anymore. And it's just, you know, getting your costings right, building that percent, that commission percentage into your costs.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And I think mate Bryden is saying that it's hitting it, because we're unfortunately running out of time, but it will be engaging experiences that get people out of their homes. And I think it's beautifully said. I'll leave you with that to unpack. We've got about 7 minutes, and Instagram is quite cutthroat, and they're going to chop it and give us 30-second noise on it. I'm telling you, we got 7 minutes. I think it's correct, and I'll leave it with you. I think it's beautifully said, Bryden.
Yeah, it's definitely there. We need to, you know, but in that engaging experience, we still need to adapt the cafe environment to be able to deliver that engaging experience. It can be done. It's not an impossible feat. We just need to do things differently.
Yeah. I think engaging can be done in many ways virtually. You and I are engaging. We're just connecting. But there's no reason why the coffee roaster couldn't have. That's something that I'm planning to do on my page, but that's different. And if people copy, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But I'm sure that someone else has done it, but a huge Zoom call, and you just sipping coffee and you just introduce yourself as like, hey, my name is Mark and I'm drinking this, and I brew it with an AeroPress next. You know, I mean, James Hoffman did the largest worldwide virtual cupping, you know, like that's engaging. So I think there's ways. And building a shop in 90 minutes made me smile, because there's unfortunately a customer of mine that couldn't keep their shop open because they're in the CBD, and they went from 100 kilos a week to virtually 3. And their landlord wasn't, unfortunately, accommodating, and they said, no, we're not going to give you a reduction, and they had to just pretty much shut. And I did try. I was like, look, you know, I'll do it for free. Like, I'll still do the social media marketing, but you need to build up something, because you got such beautiful customers who are loyal to you. And they'll buy your own homemade peanut butter with your sticker on it, and you know, it's like, and yeah, unfortunately, it's like you said, it takes 90 minutes, but we need. Yeah. It's an interesting topic. I think we got a room for, you know, do a second session, you and I, and have another chat. We could get on for a while. Look, I just want to leave you with one last question, because it's the last question that I always ask people. what's next on your planet? COVID or not COVID? What's sort of next for you? And what's your mission? And then I'll let you go because we've got about 4 minutes.
To be honest, I think I've put so much into coffee and into other people's businesses that I think next for me is focus on family. Yeah, and then hopefully be able to see the rest of the family at some point in life. But with the new baby in the house, that's priority number one. Which in the past, coffee's been number one. So yeah, sorry, coffee.
No, that's well. You go back to a human. There you go. The humans of your family, your priority. That's fantastic. And
I feel like I haven't been a human for a good 15 years. So yeah.
thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I'm feeling super lucky and privileged to have had the chance to share this conversation with you and this connection. I think I would love to perhaps do something else next time, but still talk, and maybe whether you want to introduce something that you're doing, whether it's a product or coffee, or whether you want to share. Maybe we could share a story of one of your producers' friends where we just kind of our channel. Maybe we could do something like that. Something to think about, and just we keep in touch, and maybe in a month or two, whatever, that could be a good idea, and you could kind of be their voice. Yeah, that would be interesting, actually. Yeah, but we need a little bit of planning for that. We need a little bit a few consensual pictures and all of it. But look, thank you, man. I'm really grateful. You go and enjoy your evening time with your family, and I look forward to meet up again, and maybe in person one day if it's allowed. Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Also, thank you to yourself for doing all of these live casts and everything with all of the coffee people and everything, and people like yourself and Kirk and others that are doing all this sort of stuff. It's a connection, the people. So it's definitely appreciated in these times, I'm sure, by many people around the world. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. And yeah, we'll chat soon. I'll shoot you a message later in a minute.
Awesome.
All right.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.
There you have it, guys. I'm very speechless just because you don't see my screen, but I have about, I don't know, 24 questions, and I just loved how it just flowed, and it just felt like John was just on the other side of the table, and it was very interesting to hear his insights. It was very interesting to hear what he had to say, and how real he kept it. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I have. And thanks, Brydon, for that comment, Vag, and all the people that are still here, of course. Glenn and Nadir and Dylan and Boy Babsky, Coffee Addict. Thank you for being here. Instagram has been playing up with me the last few weeks, but that's okay. We'll leave it. It's an annoying app, and this will be available on the podcast, of course, on Spotify and all the other platforms and YouTube. And the point is just what John said. It's just about connection. Where is one person listening, or how many they connect, how many they will finish the episode, it doesn't matter. It's just about doing it and adding value to that one person, even if it's myself, that I had the chance to have this chat and use my brain in a different way and be mentally, intellectually, and emotionally stimulated. I think it's incredibly valuable. So big thanks to all of you listening, and big thanks to John, of course, to be able to give us an hour of his time. And yeah, I will update soon for next week guests. We got no many left for this week. Next week we go back to 3, and yeah, I'm working out hard on the behind scene on the project. So I'm really, it's very, very difficult because I'm juggling 2 projects, but you will know soon what I'm working on. But I got 20 seconds left on the timer. Thank you, Los Cafés del Ariero. Very, very glad to see you, Brew Shark, and all of you. Love you all. Send you much love and positivity, and take care. Stay safe, and reach out if you need anything. Really, reach out to me anytime. Love you all. Ciao.